Aboriginal peoples have long known that a mix of crops is a really good thing, and there's what's called the three sisters, which is corn, beans, and squash. What I'm holding in my hand here has an incredible amount of life in it. And there are more than 6 billion living organisms in one handful of soil.
Now that's what I call a beet. Hi, I'm Coleen Rajotte, and welcome to our new show that's all about growing our own healthy food. After all, Indigenous cultures, our ancestors cultivated and domesticated food for thousands of years before European contact. That's why we're here in Mexico at Chichen Itza to explore some fascinating agricultural history.
Here the people can live off the earth. The people live here. We can work the land. There is food here. Not only that, there are animals. There is everything. It is very beautiful place to live.
Fernando Aquí is a descendant of the Mayan people. His ancestors built this magnificent city called Chichen Itza more than 1,000 years ago. It was recently named as one of the new 7 wonders of the world, which is no surprise. Their skill as builders and mathematicians is breathtaking to behold. The main temple, known as El Castillo, or the castle, was constructed for the god Kukulkan, which means feathered serpent. This pyramid is actually a highly advanced calendar. When you add up the number of steps on all 4 sides of the temple, it equals 364. Add in the top platform, and you have the number of days in a year, which brings us to why we're here. Agriculture, or more specifically, the growing of corn, influenced all aspects of Mayan culture. The intricate symbols you see throughout Chichen Itza are more than decoration. Corn seeds, corn husks, and beaded streams signify sacred corn gods and blood sacrifice. We're here for the fall equinox, an important time for the Mayan people.
The equinox is a change of season according to our parents. The snake comes down to fertilize the earth so we can harvest food for all of the people who live here. That is why we celebrate the equinox every year in Chichen Itza.
When Fernando speaks of the snake coming down to fertilize the earth, he's referring to a dramatic event that occurs here during the spring and fall equinox. Ancient stone masons aligned this pyramid so that the sun projects a diamond-backed snake on the side of the north staircase. The sun will set in just a few hours and will be front and center to witness this.
We are very proud. That's why we are here. They built this here, but today we are very proud of it.
Just outside the walls of Chichen Itza, in the jungles of the Yucatan, the Mayan people still rely on corn as their staple food.
The tortillas, which they make.
Just as the Mayans have their corn tortillas, we too rely on corn for many things. What would a movie be without popcorn? Even our cars digest ethanol, a fuel made from corn. According to many modern-day scientists, corn originated in central Mexico more than 5,000 years ago. Corn exists today because it was domesticated by indigenous people.
The people used to live off animals, but when they discovered corn, they realized it was very good to eat. It then became the most important food source of the Maya, the people who live here.
There are many theories regarding the evolution of this common grain. Corn is generally thought to have been derived from teosinte. Teosinte is a tall, drought-tolerant grass that produces 2 rows of small, triangular-shaped seeds within an enclosed husk. Over hundreds of years, indigenous peoples would have selected and bred the seeds for favored characteristics over time. The oldest known corn cobs, distinctly different from teosinte, were found in the highlands of Oaxaca in southwestern Mexico and are estimated to be 5,400 years old. It's estimated that by the time the corn reached this size, there had already been at least 2,000 years of human manipulation. I'm walking next to all of these columns, and apparently there are 480 columns, and there used to be a roof over top, and this was the former marketplace of the Mayan people. More than 1,200 years ago, the Mayans used to gather here to trade their corn and beans for things like gold.
Tap them down because they're such small seeds?
Thousands of years later, we take this all for granted that we can plant corn in our backyards. As a first-time gardener and an Indigenous person, I was thrilled to learn more about this part of our history. Earlier in our series, I learned to plant a traditional Aboriginal garden. I planted the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash together the way our ancestors did. As my garden grew, so did my curiosity about how this ancient way of planting started. I did some digging on the internet, and it led me to this man, Lee Sims, an archaeologist at the Manitoba Museum of Man and Nature.
I discovered archaeology a long time ago, actually when I went to university, and I realized that this was an area that I had missed completely. And so I became more and more fascinated with it and realized that it was exciting and it was important and it was largely unknown. When you're eating popcorn, when you're eating a chocolate bar, when you're putting vanilla in a seasoning, when you're eating beans, when you're eating squashes, that's thanks to First Nations. And when you're talking about the whole development, of course, corn being used for containers and biodegradable materials, we've got to go back and thank the First Nations in Mexico that initially started it and all of the subsequent generations since. And I want the world to realize that and appreciate that, and they shouldn't go to bed without being truly thankful that some of the most outstanding crops in the world are due to First Nations.
So if corn originated in Mexico, how did it make its way north all the way up here to Canada? Corn migrated north to the area along the Missouri River in the central United States, and then over to North Dakota. I wondered what type of corn made it to North Dakota and who grew it. That question led me to a place called Mandan near Bismarck, North Dakota. Mandan is about a 6-hour drive south of Winnipeg, where I live in Canada. Coming up next, we travel to Mandan, North Dakota to learn more about the Mandan people and why they were famous gardeners. Welcome back. We're at the Mandan Indian Village near Bismarck, North Dakota. The Mandans were busy adapting corn to their climate hundreds of years ago.
When you're eating popcorn, when you're eating a chocolate bar, when you're putting vanilla in a seasoning, when you're eating beans, when you're eating squashes, that's thanks to First Nations.
This is where the Mandan Indians lived for the better part of 1,000 years. The Mandans were famous gardeners. In fact, when French explorer La Vérendrye arrived here in the 1700s, he wrote in his journal that all he saw were acres and acres of vegetables growing.
They planted all their 3 sisters in one garden. That was corn, squash, and beans. And these 3 crops, these 3 produce, they actually complement each other as they're growing. The Mandans would have a mound of earth, probably from about my finger to my elbow, of a mound of earth, and they would plant so many corn, and the corn would grow, and they would plant some beans around it. Well, as the corn was growing, the beans would come towards it and climb and ascend the corn. And my understanding is that the corn, it draws the nutrients, certain nutrients out like nitrogen, and beans will put it back. Yeah, and then the squash we planted around, and the leaves would be arranged to maximize the coverage of the mound in order to keep the earth, the mound, from drying out. We actually calculated the size of the gardens just for this village alone, and that is about 300 acres.
And what did they do with all of that produce? Well, each family built a platform like this one where they dried all of their corn, beans, and squash. And they also built underground storage caches in each of the earth lodges where they would store all of their vegetables. So we're going to go check one out. And it's about 100 degrees outside, and I was in one of these earlier, and it's so nice and cool. It's about 30-degree difference. And this is what it looks like. And apparently 15 to 18 people would live in each of the earth lodges.
Women were the gardeners here. The women owned the gardens too. The Mandans, amongst other sedentary cultures, I mean, the Mandans were very much aware of land ownership, and they practiced it. The gardens were handed down mother to daughter. Really, men didn't own much or anything. They just owned their clothes maybe that they had, or moccasins they had.
The Mandan were at the center of a large indigenous trade network. People from all 4 directions gathered here to trade things like shells and buffalo hides for the Mandan corn and beans.
With one of the surveys, we actually recovered corn seed that we estimate going back to about 300 years ago.
Dakota still has one of the old corn cobs, and on this day, by a coincidence, he's passing along the 300-year-old cob to 2 Mandan community leaders.
I'd like to return this to the Nuita people, and you see you have an elder there.
They're going to give it to an elder who will try and grow it in her backyard.
The Mandan would actually discard their seed after maybe 3 or 4 years because they believed it had died. But there was a special where, I believe on PBS, where we saw scientists take wheat and propagate it. This wheat came from Egyptian tombs. And wheat that's over 2,000 years old, they made it come back again, they made it grow. We figured, well, if they could do that with seed that was 2,000 years old, we could do it with seed here that was only 300 years old.
And where is it growing?
Well, when we recovered some of the seed, we actually propagated it at our executive director's in his backyard, at his home, and he managed to get these corn to grow.
As I take one last look at the Mandan village, the footprint of the Mandan earth lodges still visible, I let it all sink in. The people who used to live here are gone, but thanks to their hard work, certain varieties of corn still exist today. I give thanks to our ancestors and the spirits for a safe journey to this very sacred place. Back at home, I have more appreciation for my garden and how it came to be. Lee Sims, an archaeologist, says the Mandan techniques of planting made it all the way up here to Manitoba, where I live, on the Canadian prairies.
And I was working in southwestern Manitoba, and I started finding things like storage pits and started to realize the importance of plant domestication. And of course, relating to, we knew that the Middle Missouri groups, the Mandan Hidatsa, were trading up here, and the Nakota peoples that were up here were trading down there. So there was this important connection with village tribes and the corn, beans, and squash. And then started, once they discovered the Lockport site and realized that we had farming here, then all of a sudden I looked at what I'd been doing in the Melita area and saying, wow, well, I've got storage pits there. I'll bet they were farming there. And so then got interested in making people aware that there weren't just nomadic bison hunters here, that there were people raising crops, and then into the broader picture of the phenomenal contribution of First Nations in the crops of the world. All of our history is replete with this error. You know, the Indian Affairs decided to teach the Indians how to farm to survive because the bison were gone. Well, excuse me, but First Nations had been trading with the Mandan Hadats, that they knew about corn, beans, and squash and that sort of thing beforehand. And the civilizing influence was a myth.
Once Lee tells me about the Lockport site, I know I have to go for a visit. Lockport is on the banks of the Red River, a 30-minute drive north of Winnipeg. Lee is now working on an international exhibit about all of this fascinating history.
So we're actually standing on top of the area where they stored vegetables.
Yep. Corn, at least, probably beans and squash. They found direct evidence of the corn, but they didn't find the beans. They don't preserve as well, but certainly they have found corn seeds and corn cupules and so on.
And Lee, what was that like to be here and to look under the ground when it was excavated and see evidence of this?
It was exciting. It was more than exciting. It was mind blowing, because there, you know, you can talk about something, you can hear about something, but the nice thing about archaeology is you show it, you prove it.
And when you're actually down there, do you ever get a feeling of a presence?
Goosebumps.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. You know, there's an essence, if you want, that's new and different. That it's not in sync with. It's not in sync, but it's different from everything you see around. You're in a whole separate world, a whole set of awareness and experience and revelation.
We head down the riverbank to take a closer look.
So Lee, what are we going to find here?
Well, if we look down here, we should be able to find evidence of the eroding shoreline. So we might actually see the odd artifact eroding out of there. In the early spring, before all of this vegetation grows, that's when people start seeing the evidence of eroding storage pits and artifacts.
So Lee, I would love to find something that has appeared on the riverbank from ages ago. So people actually find things here?
They actually do, particularly in the spring. And when we go down, you may just be lucky enough to find something down there. Ooh. There we go. So there's a piece of Knife River flint, a small flake that comes from western North Dakota. So that gives us evidence of trade taking place.
Lee says the piece of flint we found could have originated at the Mandan site that we were just at in North Dakota. We did not set this up. It was a complete surprise.
How do you look for
we could find harpoons, or we could find pottery, any variety of things. What you have to do is develop a good eye. So you look down, it's like there's a piece of glass, and you look down, and is that a flake or is that a leaf? And you keep looking around, and there, that looks like, and it is, we have a piece of pottery. And not only that, but if you look at this side here, you see the groove in it. That's part of the farming period pottery. So this group of people we're talking about were actually making this pottery. So we now have evidence of a woman. It was well decorated. It's got style common to the pottery tradition coming up from the Dakotas. And so you've got this phenomenal piece.
What would this have been made from?
Local clays, and then crushed rock, and then they would have built it in a mold and a cloth mold, and decorated, smoothed it, fired it, and look at how thin it is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a huge pot.
So neat.
Yeah, huge pot. Somebody's phenomenal skill.
Everything had come full circle, or so I thought. Coming up next, we return to Chichen Itza for the fall equinox. Welcome back. We're in the Yucatan, Mexico. Pascal Dezib is a descendant of the Mayan people who have lived in this area of the Yucatan jungle for more than 1,200 years. He and his family operate a roadside refreshment stand. On the surface, he's making his way in today's world. But take a peek behind his store and you'll discover that the old ways of survival handed down from his indigenous ancestors are very much alive.
This is much better because there are no chemicals. Everything is directly from the nature. The water comes right from the sky. It is not contaminated or anything. It is much healthier.
La tortilla de maíz más fuerte y avanza más años adelante. Queda más viejo. Muy bonito.
A corn.
Pascal gives us a tour of his garden. In it, he grows papayas, tomatoes, chili peppers, and, of course, corn, beans, and squash. He's planted in the mound system, the way his ancestors have done for thousands of years.
When we plant the corn, we make a hole in the ground with a stick. We put in 4 or 5 corn seeds. We also include 1 or 2 bean seeds.
O lo que sea, o ibes, otros ingredientes, se le pone.
While one plant is growing, the other plant also grows up around the cornstalk, unrolling and enveloping the cornstalk.
Largo el bejuco y llega al mes de su
By December or January, if they attach well, there are new beans to eat.
We say goodbye to Pascal as we have to get back to Chichen Itza. The sun is about to set and everyone is assembling to watch the fall equinox. We wait and wait, but there is bad news. It's too cloudy, and without the sun, there will be no shadow.
It's cloudy now, so I think it's not going to appear that shadow of the snake. Yeah,
And I'm very disappointed about that, but we are going to come back tomorrow.
Right.
The snake shadow will appear for 5 days after the equinox, so our guide agrees to call us if it's sunny the next day. And it is. We race back just in time to witness a once-in-a-lifetime picture. Just as advertised, the shadow takes the form of a diamond-back snake. I think back to how the Mayans would take this as a signal to harvest.
Well, on the way here it was raining and I was getting so nervous that the sun would go behind the clouds and we wouldn't be able to see the shadow. So we ran out here and there it was, and I couldn't believe it because we were here 2 days ago and it was really cloudy and it was very disappointing, but today I'm just thrilled that I actually witnessed this amazing sight. It's going this way. Okay.
Well, what started as a basic how-to gardening show turned into a decision to plant a traditional Aboriginal garden in my backyard. And this turned into a journey to find out more about the history of our ancestors and agriculture. From the origins of corn in Mexico to our Mandan relatives in North Dakota, it was an amazing journey. I will never look at a corn cob or popcorn the same way again.
Well, that's all we have time for today. So we're going to leave you with some more shots from Chichen Itza in Mexico.